Jungkook woke up the next morning with a headache, remnants of last night's tension still lingering in his chest. He rubbed his temple as he recalled how Taehyung had held him, whispered that he already knew. But what did that even mean? Did Taehyung truly care, or was he just possessive? Sighing, Jungkook got dressed, choosing a crisp white shirt and a fitted blazer. He refused to let last night affect his professionalism. He had a big presentation today, one that could secure an important deal for Taehyung's company. By the time he arrived at the office, the entire floor was buzzing with excitement. Everyone knew how crucial this deal was. As Jungkook entered the boardroom, his eyes briefly met Taehyung's. The CEO was seated at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Jungkook took a deep breath, shaking off the tension, and began his presentation. He spoke with confidence, carefully explaining the strategic benefits of their proposal. His words were sharp, his arguments precise. The investors listened intently. Even Taehyung, who usually kept a passive demeanor during these meetings, was watching Jungkook closely. And then, it happened. One of the investors, Choi, an older but charismatic businessman, leaned forward, smiling at Jungkook. "You're quite impressive, Mr. Jian. It's refreshing to see someone with both intelligence and charm." Jungkook gave a polite smile, used to handling flattery in the business world. "Thank you, Mr. Choi. I believe our company can provide the best results for this collaboration." But before he could continue, a sharp voice cut through the air. "I'd appreciate it if we kept this meeting professional." Jungkook froze for a second. "Taehyung." The entire room went silent. Taehyung's gaze was locked on Mr. Choi, his jaw tight, his expression dark. Jungkook's heart skipped a beat. Was Taehyung jealous? Mr. Choi chuckled, raising his hands in surrender. "Of course, CEO Kim. No offense meant." Jungkook couldn't believe it. Taehyung never interrupted meetings like this. He was always calm, always collected. But now, with just one harmless compliment, he was showing his possessiveness in front of everyone. As the meeting ended and the investors left, Jungkook turned to Taehyung. "That was unnecessary," he muttered under his breath. Taehyung gave him a blank stare. What was Jungkook huffed? Calling out Mr. Choi like that? Taehyung leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. "I don't like the way he looked at you." Jungkook's stomach tightened. He didn't know if he wanted to smile or get angry. "And why does that matter?" Taehyung didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, stepping closer until Jungkook was pressed against the table. Jungkook's breath hitched. Taehyung's voice was low, dangerous. "Because you belong to me." Jungkook's pulse spiked. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell Taehyung he wasn't some possession. But the way Taehyung was looking at him, like he was something precious. Jungkook swallowed hard. "Then act like it." Taehyung stiffened. And just like that, he walked away. For the next few days, Jungkook tried to ignore the tension. Taehyung was still the same cold, unreadable CEO in the office, but every now and then, Jungkook would catch him stealing glances. Watching. Waiting. It was driving him insane. Finally, one evening, Jungkook had enough. He marched straight into Taehyung's office, slamming the door shut behind him. Taehyung barely looked up from his paperwork. "Is there a reason you're here without knocking?" Jungkook crossed his arms. "Yes. You keep acting like I belong to you, but then you keep pushing me away." Taehyung finally set his pen down. I do not push you away. Jungkook let out a frustrated laugh. Oh. Then what do you call it? Taehyung sighed, leaning back in his chair. Jungkook, it's not that simple. Make it simple. Taehyung's gaze darkened. You don't understand? Jungkook took a step closer. Then make me understand. For a moment, Taehyung didn't speak. Then, in a low voice, barely above a whisper, he said, because if I let myself have you, I'll never let you go. Jungkook's breath caught. Taehyung stood up, walking toward him slowly. And I don't know if that's something you want. Jungkook's heart was pounding. Try me, he whispered. Taehyung reached out, fingers brushing against Jungkook's cheek. And then, him. A deep, possessive one that told Jungkook everything Taehyung had been holding back. And for the first time, Jungkook understood. Taehyung had been holding back because he was afraid of how much he needed him. But now, there was no turning back. Jungkook was his. And Taehyung was finally ready to show him just how much that meant. Jungkook wasn't sure how long the kiss lasted, but when they finally pulled apart, his chest was rising and falling rapidly, heart pounding as if trying to escape his ribs. Taehyung's dark eyes searched his face, waiting for any sign of regret, any hesitation. But there was none. Jungkook wanted this. He wanted him. Are you going to push me away again? Jungkook whispered, his hands still gripping Taehyung's suit. Taehyung exhaled sharply, his fingers tightening on Jungkook's waist. I was never pushing you away, he murmured. I was trying to protect you. Jungkook frowned. From what Taehyung hesitated, his usual confidence faltering for the first time. From me, he finally admitted. Jungkook, I don't do things halfway. If I let myself have you, I'll want you completely. And I don't trust myself to. Jungkook cut him off. With another. This time, it was Jungkook who took control, pressing against Taehyung, forcing him to feel every ounce of frustration, every moment of longing. When they broke apart again, Jungkook's eyes were fierce. Then stop thinking, he said. And just be with me, for a moment. Taehyung said nothing. Then, with a slow exhale, he nodded. All right, he murmured, pressing his forehead against Jungkook's. I'm yours. Jungkook smiled, his fingers sliding down Taehyung's wrist, interlocking their hands. And I'm yours. Taehyung's grip tightened. Finally, no more games. Just them. Just love. Jungkook never expected Taehyung to be the kind of lover who spoke through actions rather than words, but the more time passed, the more he understood. It was in the way Taehyung always had Jungkook's coffee ready before he even asked. The way he made sure Jungkook's schedule wasn't overloaded, even when the CEO himself had endless meetings to attend. It was in the way Taehyung's hand always found Jungkook's lower back in crowded rooms, guiding him, protecting him, claiming him in the most subtle ways. And now, as Jungkook sat on the couch in Taehyung's penthouse, a book resting on his lap, he felt the warmth of Taehyung's presence beside him. Neither of them spoke much. There was no need to. The silence was comfortable. Then, suddenly, Taehyung spoke. You're moving in? Jungkook blinked, turning his head. Excuse me. Taehyung didn't look up from his tablet. You're moving in with me. Jungkook raised a brow. That sounds like a command, not a request. Taehyung finally met his gaze, something unreadable flickering in his dark eyes. Would you say no? Jungkook opened his mouth, then closed it. Damn it. Taehyung smirked, clearly pleased with Jungkook's hesitation. Jungkook huffed. At least pretend to ask properly. Taehyung set his tablet aside and shifted closer, his hand resting on Jungkook's knee. Move in with me, he murmured, voice low and intimate. I want to come home to you. Every day. Jungkook's heart stuttered, his fingers tightening around the book in his lap. They had spent so long dancing around their feelings, so long denying what was obvious. But now, there was no room for hesitation. Jungkook exhaled, setting the book aside before wrapping his arms around Taehyung's neck. You really don't give me a choice, do you? Taehyung chuckled, pulling him closer. Never. Jungkook laughed softly against his lips. And kissed. Slow and deep, Jungkook knew he didn't need a choice. Because he had already chosen Taehyung a long time ago. Jungkook had been Taehyung's for weeks now, but the CEO's jealousy hadn't lessened one bit. If anything, it had gotten worse. The night was another perfect example. Jungkook was at an industry gala, dressed in an all-black suit that hugged his body perfectly. He looked stunning, every bit the confident, successful man he had always been. But unfortunately, others had noticed too, including a certain business rival, Min Ji-hyun, who had been talking to Jungkook for far too long. Taehyung's fingers tightened around his whiskey glass as he watched the scene unfold from across the room. Jungkook was laughing. Ji-hyun was leaning in. Taehyung had seen enough. In 3 strides, he reached them, his arm smoothly wrapping around Jungkook's waist as he pulled him close. Enjoying yourself? Taehyung asked, his tone polite but cold. Jungkook raised a brow, clearly amused. I was. Ji-hyun smirked, clearly unfazed. Relax, CEO Kim. We were just talking. Taehyung's grip on Jungkook's waist tightened. Then talk to someone else. Jungkook sighed, hiding his smile as Ji-hyun chuckled and excused himself. The moment they were alone, Jungkook turned to Taehyung, crossing his arms. Really? That was unnecessary. Taehyung's jaw ticked. He was flirting with you. Jungkook rolled his eyes. It was harmless. I don't care. Taehyung leaned in, voice lower now. No one gets to flirt with you except me. Jungkook's lips parted in surprise, heat rushing to his cheeks. You're impossible, he muttered. Taehyung smirked. And yet, you're still mine. Jungkook sighed, shaking his head, but he didn't push Taehyung away. Instead, he let himself be pulled closer, melting into Taehyung's possessive hold. He'd never admit it out loud, but sometimes, he liked this side of Taehyung. Maybe even a little too much.